the government has banned 327 what are known as combination drugs. These are basically drugs that have a combination of active agents, including popular drugs like Saridon.
The Supreme Court took a decision where they said that whatever the committee has recommended, the government should go with that. And with regards to this recommendation, now more than 300 drugs have been banned by the Ministry of Health with immediate effect.
Government has decided to ban these medicines. They certainly have done it on the basis of a review of the safety and efficacy data that was submitted. And they found that these medicines did not have adequate therapeutic justification and were found to be either irrational or unsafe.
If we go around and check every drug that's out there in the market that's being manufactured and every combination that is being manufactured and ask the drug companies for what is the scientific basis for these drugs, that's when we might discover that there are hundreds more out there for which there is no scientific rationale for using them in the way they're being used.
So here's what's really concerning, and there were some reports that were submitted to the High Court, one of which said India is a dumping ground for drugs that nobody else will allow. But for some reason, we allow them in India. Now, we should be very concerned about the fact that drugs like Saridon, for example, Decol Total, used so often and so liberally by the Indian population, have been banned for being risky. And this is just 327. I want to remind our viewers what an uphill journey it has been for the government to just take these off the shelf, because it started a couple of years ago and these big pharmaceutical companies took the government to court over and over again seeking or blocking this ban. And finally today the ban has come through. The other thing I want you to realize is that there are a total of 2,000 combination drugs in India, whereas overseas, in the States for example, there are about 500. Why does India allow these combination drugs to move around our market so freely? Are our lives cheaper than the lives in the West? Are pharmaceutical giants using us as guinea pigs or dumping grounds? Here are some worrying things we discovered. That unlike in the West, you don't need a central government license to manufacture a drug in India. You need a state government FDA license. And funnily enough, when we looked at these drugs, we found that most of them are either manufactured in Himachal Pradesh or in Sikkim. And these two states offer great tax and freight rebates for these companies to come and manufacture the drugs there. So in that case, are these states also going easy on these companies when they're handing out licenses? Also, while somehow the government does test drugs that are different from each other, the combination of two chemicals is not tested or not trialed in our country. And worrying even more is the fact that we don't trial medication that's specifically made for children. It's going to make you sit up and notice that we have a lot to be worried about when it comes to the most simple things in our country under healthcare. Are our lives cheap? Joining me on the show, Murli Neelakantan is a lawyer with experience in the healthcare sector. Dr. Mohsin Wali is the former honorary physician to the President of India. Dr. Ananth Phade is the founder member of the All India Drug Action Network, co-petitioner in the Supreme Court case. Dr. R.N. Tandon is a joint secretary of the Indian Medical Association. Rajiv Pandey with the BJP. R.C. Janeja, founder and chairman of Mankind Pharma Limited. I welcome all of you to this conversation and thank you for making time to be with us today. Udi, I'm going to start with you. When we look at these, and you actually recommended that we go out and buy these.
Yes.
Hopefully they will be off the shelf in the next 2 days. But you did say there are some parts of this that's very, very worrying.
Yes.
Could you tell us what worries you about, let's say, the most popular Saridon?
So I'm not a doctor, so I won't try and prescribe what's good and bad about it. But if you look at a lot of these drugs that have been on the list for a long time now to be banned, there are very few trials, if any, for a lot of those ingredients. That's the reason they're not sold anywhere else in the world. In the civilized world, you can't go and buy these combination drugs. That's the scary part. You can only buy them in India. Each of those ingredients might be safe, might be trialed, but together we don't know how these two drugs work with each other. and that combination is not tested either on adults or on children. So you have a lot of those drugs there that are not meant for children, but we see them in cough syrups, for example, combinations that are not permitted for children, but they're sold with babies on the pack. That's the worrying part. There are lots of these ingredients that shouldn't be put together and taken together.
Right, you know, sold with babies on the pack, like we have one here. And it's a very cute little happy child. It's cough syrup, but I understand that cough syrup is among the most worrying in the market right now.
It is. A lot of the combinations would not be permitted or approved anywhere else in the world.
And why are they permitted and approved in India?
Because nobody's asked the question so far. Why should they not be approved? So each of the ingredients is approved. There should have been a trial for pediatric use, which is what happens elsewhere in the world. Clearly, that's not been done in India, and so we have these products out there in the market and quite easily available across the counter. And strangely enough, doctors seem to prescribe it.
You know, I want to read out some portions, and this is from the Economic Times report. This is the observation of the expert committee that was set up. They said, over the years, India has become a dumping ground for irrational combination drugs that are not sold or approved in any other country for consumption. So this is what it has come to, and we must ask that question as well. Dr. Wali, if you can hear me, why has India become a dumping ground? Do you believe that our FDAs are not careful enough, or our lives are not important enough?
Well, this question has been going around in the air for several years, and I had talks on this 5 years back also. I don't know how many companies are making a single combination or different combination in each locality. As you mentioned in the beginning, that is smaller towns like states of Himachal Pradesh, and even in Delhi, you go to the smaller locations and which are not even sanitized, very badly located. You find drug manufacturing companies, and their drugs are available all over, even in the small towns, and they have a huge market. And this market comes from most of the doctors who are not very well qualified. We, the doctors working in responsible positions, we always self-audit our prescriptions. But doctors sitting like AMBS doctors or BUMS doctor, BIMS doctors, so-called practicing quacks, they have no idea of what they are writing. They are taught by the medical representatives, and they are taught by the pamphlets, and they are given lucrative schemes. You sell our product in this much number, you get this gift. So this Medical Association, Drug Controller of India, they are watching for a long time, for decades. I can say, I can certify this on camera. Government is doing its best to prevent this kind of things and unlawful business, I would call it. And there are cheaper products, there are cheaper brands, there are unknown brands.
Dr. Wali, let me stop you there, because let's look at the ones that have been banned so far. The most popular of which is Saridon. Now, these are not mom and pop shops. These are not unknown brands. This is Bayer Consumer Care. This is Piramal Enterprises. These are not, you know, this is not a mom and pop shop which is making cheap products. Decol Total is a Reckitt brand, in fact. So we can't write this off to some random, you know, cow in Uttar Pradesh manufacturing it in his cowshed. This is not it. These are multinational companies who follow different rules overseas and different rules here in India.
When I was a child, yes, you have a point. I was a child and I used to hear an advertisement. There were no televisions at that time. Zukam aafat hai, Saridon rahat hai. So these were combinations available, and some private practitioners were dispensing this combination in the form of powders. So these brands got promoted, and this is to cater the large number of populations. The companies are making their fast buck, and this has been happening for many decades. I told you, when I was a child, this was the ad for this tablet. So this is something prevalent. It's by prevalent in the society, and over-the-counter availability of such brands. No doctor will write on his prescription. Saridon patient will throw away this prescription after giving fees to me, like 2,000 rupees I charge in hospital, and I give a prescription for Saridon. Patient will never acknowledge that prescription.
No. So Dr. Wali, let's acknowledge the fact that in India at one point child marriage and sati and dowry was rampant and was practiced for many decades. But at some point, the government needs to take responsibility and step in and formulate laws that stop this sort of thing. You can't say that because it has been happening since we were children that it will continue to happen. It has obviously gotten much worse than what it was when we were children. Now, let me bring in the rest of my panel. Dr. Phadke is from the All India Drug Action Network. Dr. Anand Phadke, could you tell us what the problem is? Because you were co-petitioner in the Supreme Court. As a doctor, as a healthcare practitioner, what do you think is the risk right now, especially for our children, when it comes to pediatric drugs?
No, the first thing that I would like to make that they are being banned not necessarily because they are hazardous. The main ground is there is no therapeutic justification of adding another drug to a single ingredient. Okay. So you don't have, the medicine doesn't have to be hazardous in order to be banned. For example, many of pharma companies are supposing they add some vitamin or some mineral to an antidiarrheal preparation. That needs to be banned because it is irrational. It means that some unnecessary additional medicine is made to be consumed by the consumers, and therefore when you try to test the quality of the medicine by a regulatory authority, it becomes much more difficult to test the quality when there are 2, 3, 4, 6 ingredients. If you test one single ingredient medication, it is much more easy. And secondly, of course, you expose the patient to unnecessary possible side effects. Maybe only 1 out of 100 will get that side effect. But why? So please be informed that it is not a question of hazardous versus non-hazardous drugs. It is a question of rational versus irrational drugs. Some of the irrational drugs are of course quite hazardous, but that is not the central criteria. And therefore we have been demanding that very few rational fixed dose combinations have been recommended by the World Health Organization, by the textbooks all over the world, and only those rational fixed dose combinations will be allowed. For example, the World Health Organization has a list of essential drugs, 364, out of which only 7% are fixed dose combinations. So there are some really good, rational, helpful fixed dose combinations approved by textbooks and by the WHO. But in India, we have almost 40% of the medicines available in the market are in the form of fixed dose combinations, and they are prescribed not by quacks but by topmost consultants. So it's not a question between Indian pharma versus multinational. It's not a question between Jhola Chap, non-qualified or semi-qualified doctors versus the top doctors. All doctors across qualifications, all pharma companies across nationalities have been indulging into these irrational prescriptions, and the fundamental point is we should have a rational pharmaceutical policy. This is what we have been arguing from 1980. It's not something which is new, and a series of litigations have happened, a series of committees have been appointed, including experts. For example, take this 344 medicines. Okay, what are these 344 medicines? These are the medicines which were manufactured with the permission of the state authorities, FDA, without seeking permission from the central authority, which is patently illegal. So these are basically, in a sense, illegal medicines. There are 1,000 irrational fixed dose combinations in India, out of which only these 344 have been banned purely because they were allowed to be manufactured by the state by the state FDA authorities without even taking a permission from the central drug authority. So absolutely grossly irrational, grossly illegal things have been sort of called out. That also the government appointed this committee called Professor Kokatek Committee only after the Standing Parliamentary Committee in its 59th report made a very stinging criticism that what is this? That there are so many fixed dose combinations which have not been allowed, permitted by the central authority, but they have been manufactured in different kinds of states. And therefore, because of a lot of noise that we made, a Professor Kokate committee was set up. Professor Kokate committee gave a lot of time and lot of long rope to all pharma companies to submit whatever evidence that they have to justify their irrational combinations. And they could not do anything. Very little evidence came. Therefore, the Kokate committee banned it. Then the pharma companies went to Delhi court, High Court. Delhi High Court gave some kind of a stay order based on purely administrative, purely legal point, not at all on medical point. And therefore, they stayed the fixed dose combination ban that was there given by the government in March 16 after the Kokate committee report. Then we went to the central government and we went to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court set aside the High Court judgment and said no, the government can very easily, is empowered under its own act to ban whichever drugs it wants after satisfying itself that it is not serving a rational purpose. Therefore, just to add an additional security, the government, the Supreme Court said appoint yet another committee. Yes. So second committee was appointed after the Supreme Court judgment in December 17. Professor Nilima Kshirsagar and her colleagues, and they also said the same thing. Whatever the Kokate committee had said, they should ban all these 344. So it's a long story, and it is not just because the government wants it, government has been forced to do it. Because of standing committee, parliamentary committee report, because of the court orders. So I think the basic thing should be very clear.
Right. Dr. Tandon, from the Indian Medical Association, we also have a situation right now where the Indian Dermatological Association has gone to court asking for certain steroid-containing creams to be banned off the market. The doctors themselves are concerned. Is it because our regulations are not strong enough?
Yes. So there are two very important issues when we are discussing about this FDCs, fixed dose combination. In fact, what has been happening that the license, as has been said, that the new drug comes into existence when you unite or mix two drugs which have been approved by any of the authorities like the Central Drug Company, CDSCO has approved, or the DCGI has approved. Then these two molecules which have been approved, if they are mixed in a pattern, a fixed dose pattern, then it is called as a new drug. And for the new drug, every manufacturing was taking license from the state authorities, and which was not going to the center. And that was the biggest problem, because these drugs which are mixed, they may be, sometimes they are good, but sometimes they are irrational. So the drugs which have been banned is not because they are hazardous, they are giving only complication or the side effect. The most important thing is that there is an irrational combination. Like if you are giving a painkiller which has got 4 kinds of NSAIDs which are available in the market, that is not at all rational that you give all 4 drugs in one combination. And then you are preparing certain drugs which don't have same bioavailability. The dosage differences is there. One is given 3 times in a day, other one is supposed to be given once a day. So when you are mixed such kind of a drugs which will either be underdose or it will be overdose. So these things are creating problems. So this is not the right thing which is to be done. And then what is happening, like when you're talking about dermatologists have gone, because most of the skin ointments which are commonly used and available, or rather I'll say over the counter, are being prescribed by so many doctors, which Dr. Wali has said in the beginning, that they are not well trained, they are not well qualified, but those are containing steroids. And the steroid gives you immediate effect whenever there is a skin problem. But the side effect of steroid, if you are having some kind of an infection, is so bad that you cannot even understand and you cannot even see, and it becomes so difficult to treat. So such kind of irrational combinations are being banned, and I think this is the right thing, that such irrational combinations to be banned. Maybe they were available, but they are available over the counter.
Dr. Tandon, are there more such irrational combinations in the market? Have we managed to get them all in this 327? Is this all of it, or are they more in the market?
Yes, definitely. No, definitely these are the things which are under consideration, and there is still many combinations which are under consideration and being studied. I'm sure they will come out with the list, another list, after some time when their study is completed. Because this time everything has been discussed with all the specialists and with all the pharma companies, and then only once we that this was found that hardly any justification was there for this irrational combination.
But tell me something,
So
Dr.
they
Tandon,
have been
has the
banned.
Indian
I think
Medical
in future
Association
also,
asked your members not to prescribe any of these irrational combinations or what you call fixed combination doses?
Right, definitely these drugs which have been banned have been circulated to our members all over India, and they have been informed that such a fixed dose combination.
No, but why did you wait for the ban? Shouldn't you have done this proactively earlier?
In the market.
Shouldn't you have done this as doctors proactively before the ban came in?
We have been discussing this. We have been. Yes. We have been discussing this. We have been explaining that so many drugs which are available and being used irrationally. It should be taken into consideration, and you have to think how the chemists are selling medicine and how they are prescribing medicine and how the quacks are prescribing medicine. We were for rational uses of prescription, and that is only possible when you can control the quackery and you can control the sale of medicine without prescription from the chemist. Because it is not that.
Technically, my question to you was, the Indian Medical Association could have put out a notice 2 years ago when this first came up, before it was taken to High Court to overturn the government ban, when you said you've been talking about this for years. Why did you wait until the actual ban came in to tell all of your members not to prescribe these, or to just tell their patients to beware?
I'm sure what you are saying, it is being followed. I am 100% sure the qualified doctors are not prescribing these irrational combinations. We are prescribing rational combination because there are combinations which are good.
Dr. Tandon, there is a difference from being 100% sure that this may be happening and putting out a notice from the Indian Medical Association advising your members not to do it. So my question is, did the Indian Medical Association put out a notice 2 years ago asking members to stop prescribing these drugs? 2015 will be 3 years.
You're right. Such instructions were discussed, and we have discussed that these combinations should not be in use. When there was a problem of nimesulide in pediatrics age group, IMA was fighting that it should not be given in the pediatrics age group. This is, I am talking about 12-15 years ago. So we have been talking about the irrational uses of drug. And we have been talking about irrational antibiotics combination.
So your answer is no then, because
members.
This entire thing came up, if I'm not mistaken, according to the timeline my team gave me, back in 2010, and the real court case began in 2015, and at that point, when the list was already out, the first report had been looked into, would have been a good time for the Indian Medical Association to advise your members, simply out of care for your patients, to either stop prescribing and advise your patients to stop taking these drugs. From my understanding is that you did neither of these two things. Dr. Tandon is not responding. R.C. Juneja, founder, chairman of Mankind Pharma Limited. Mr. Juneja?
Indian Medical Association members are much smaller in number. The members who belong to Indian Medical Associations are much smaller in number.
But it's still an association, Dr. Wali.
And a huge number of people practicing other systems of medicines, they have been encouraged to prescribe allopathic medicine time and again to promote them and the system.
No, that's fair. Even if the Indian Medical Association has altogether 10 doctors, which it doesn't, through its 10 doctors, it could have still passed that message out, which it did not. So what is the point of this association then, if this message was not passed out through the association? You're an organized association, you have members who have registered, you can tell them clearly, but you didn't, is my point. Even if it's only 10 doctors, it was still not done. Now, here's my question to R.C. Juneja.
We have passed on this information.
When? When did you pass on the information? Today?
not today, not today. A number of occasions we are discussing this thing, that this is not the right thing. These combinations are not good, and antibiotics combinations which are misused, this should not be prescribed to anyone.
Okay, we
have been discussing at various forums in our association meetings and every time.
Fair enough. R.C. Juneja is with Mankind Pharma Limited, founder and chairman. Mr. Juneja, tell us this: when it comes to getting a particular drug or a combination of drugs cleared for manufacture, and we found out now, if we flip any of these boxes over, we'll see they're being marketed by companies in Mumbai but being manufactured in Badi district, Solan, Himachal Pradesh. What is the process, and do you believe the process is lax?
I think there's some confusion. Confusion is that we believe that in combinations or in FDCs, there seems to be huge profits. It's not one of the reasons. It may be one of the reasons, but not many.
Nobody said anything about a profit at all.
One of the most important thing in
we're just talking about the risk and the fact that it's irrational, and why are we doing it? I haven't even gotten to the profits of the pharmaceutical industry
almost
yet.
Every company.
Yes, go ahead, please, Mr. Juneja.
Almost every company was doing it. Let us start from 1980s. All these cough syrups and you're naming Saridon, they were available.
Okay.
And being marketed by one of the top multinational companies, Roche Pharma.
Correct.
Roche, Park Davis, they were the multinational companies. They were marketing these products.
Okay.
They were in combination. And now many Indian companies, even multinational companies, have been marketing these combinations of drugs, different molecules.
All over the world?
And what happened?
Mr. Juneja, all over the world?
I agree with you.
Or only in India?
No, Saridon, I don't have any information all over the world, but I'm not talking about globally, but in India.
Yes.
They were marketing since 1980, the Saridon, Anacin, and even cough syrups. Cough syrup, combination of cough syrup, four more molecules like that. But now the justice has been delivered to everybody now, I must say. That Supreme Court has taken a right decision. They have gone to DTAB, and DTAB has selected which are the rational, which are the irrational products, combinations. And I think now the 344 combinations have been ruled out. Now they will not be marketed anymore.
No, you're just, one second.
We have some of
Mr.
them.
Juneja,
we have started withdrawing from the market.
Okay, which are the ones that you've withdrawn from the market?
I beg your pardon?
Which are the combinations that you've had to withdraw from the market?
Yes. There are few. There are 3, 5, 6, 7, 8 about.
Give us
we
some
are withdrawing
names.
from market.
Okay, so tell me something, Mr.
Almost
Juneja.
every company is withdrawing this product.
So, Mr. Juneja, how did you get clearance to manufacture these combinations? I'm not saying you did something wrong. I want to know what the process is.
No, we have gone legally, right?
Yes, yes.
We have taken from state drug controllers.
State drug controllers.
State drug controllers. They have given us the permission. Under the permission, we have launched those products.
Yes, and do these state drug controllers ask for trials of these products?
Not exactly. Not exactly. They have their own wisdom to approve or give us the license to manufacture and market these products.
Without trials. What about pediatric drugs? Are they tested separately for pediatrics?
Pediatric drugs, I think most of them are rational. Most of them are rational. I cannot really say one or two.
Pediatric cough syrup apparently is one of the worst of them. I don't believe that's true.
No, cough syrup, they have been approved. Now even Supreme Court has cleared those products.
No, are you telling me that there are no pediatric cough syrups with combinations in them? Combinations of...
There are very few, but they have been withdrawn the market. We have been withdrawn the market, but they are...
Mr. Juneja, I just went to the market today and bought a random cough syrup and it has a combination in it. But so here's the question to ask Rajiv Pandey of the BJP. Mr. Pandey, thank you so much for listening very carefully and very patiently this entire time. It does seem like we've now reached a conclusion on a couple of things. And this I'm reading out of the report of the committee that was tasked by the Supreme Court on this particular matter. This is what the committee has said. Over the years, India has become a dumping ground for irrational FDCs that are not approved in any other country for consumption. It also says that almost 95% of these appellants fail to provide safety, rationality, compatibility of these FDCs. That most of the companies appealing the ban had not generated safety and efficacy data of their own products. Indications for which these FDCs were mentioned were found by the subcommittee to be too broad, too absurd, vague, and were not as per treatment guidelines. Most of these FTCs and their use would lead to unnecessary use, and patients would be exposed to the risk of multiple ingredients where one would suffice. Now, it goes on, and I could continue to read, but it does seem like India is particularly lax when it comes to regulation about pharmaceuticals. Now, the reason, we also looked this up, why Himachal Pradesh and Sikkim have so many pharmaceuticals being produced out of there is because we want to become a pharmaceutical superpower in this country in the next few years, which I completely support. But can we do it at the price of our own organs? Because that's the price we're paying, Mr. Pandey.
No, it should not be, and it cannot be. I am personally appeared before the High Court in the matter as well as in the Supreme Court in the matter, which matter you are referring. You know, in 2015, Kokate Committee report came. Government took action, and in 2016 March, by a notification, banned several drugs, more than 350 drugs. Thereafter, all the people who were aggrieved by that, they challenged that order, and they claimed that they were not given hearing. On the technical ground, they got a stay from the single bench of the Delhi High Court. And you see the government's action. Government did not go in appeal before the division bench. Government challenged directly to Supreme Court because the writ petitions were filed in several high courts of this country.
Mr. Pandey, we've been through the details of this case, and obviously big pharma companies will go to court because they can afford fancy lawyers. But my question is not that. My question is, how did the drugs make it to our counters to begin with? Why don't we have a better clearance and approval process in the government?
Yeah, I'm saying, you're absolutely, you're right. I am telling you, these all drugs were there in the market for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. You know, nobody was doing anything. The issue is when Kokate Committee was formed and thereafter he gave a finding, government took action then and there. 2015, the Kokate Committee report. 2016,
no. One second. Mr. Pandey, this is not about politics. One second. Mr. Pandey, calm down. This is not about politics. This is not about this government, previous government. Let's not go there. The first movement, the government brought a notification to restrict 344 categories of FTCs back in March 2010. That's when it started. Now, my question is simply this, and I will ask the question again. If back in 2010, we knew these drugs were bad and we knew they were making it into our system through loopholes in the system, why haven't we fixed the system? Why are state FDAs still being given the authority to clear manufacturing and marketing of drugs? We know they're doing it without conducting any trials. We know they're not conducting trials specifically for pediatric drugs, which putting our children at risk at this point. That is what we should be stopping. Now, I'm not questioning the government over the entire court case. I want to know why we haven't fixed the system, which means that even today, the state of Sikkim or the state of Himachal Pradesh will be clearing new drugs with a slight modification from what is already banned. Isn't that possible?
No, now that is not possible because that now the findings are there. Madam, you know, they can give the drugs, then government has power to ban the drug.
But every state was giving permission.
Yes, thank you, Mr.
Every state was giving permission to. Not only
every state was
you just singled out Himachal or Sikkim.
Take away the state's ability to give those permissions.
All those.
I want to show you two things here, and this is interesting. In the first list that came out, Vicks Action 500 was part of that list, and so was Saridon. In the second list that has come out, Saridon is the only one on the list. Vicks Action 500 has not been banned; it's not on the list. There is only a difference of one chemical between the two.
These two. Decold and Vicks action.
Decold and Vicks action. There's only a difference of one chemical, active chemical between the two of them. They're very, very similar. So what is stopping these pharmaceutical companies from making a mild change, going back to...
There is an expert committee who has looked into the matter.
You're missing my point, Mr. Pandey. Why isn't the government changing the process, is my question.
The government, that government will take a call, but what I'm saying, you cannot decide sitting in a that government choose. There is a committee, there is a group of doctors, there is a group of people who are involved in this job. Neither I can say what should be the process, nor you can say what should be the process.
Well, I think that what is interesting is that every government representative in the channel reminds me that I can't do anything. Now, 1 second. Murli, tell me something. This committee, that the two committees that the government formed were to specifically look at the list of 344. Was not to look at the process.
No.
So it was beyond the jurisdiction of both of these committees to look at the process of approval.
Correct. And the only time you get some criticism of the process is the parliamentary committee, which talks about the process for approval of drugs, and it implicates every regulator in that.
Yes.
So if you've seen the extracts, it says very clearly the CDSO is involved in it, the DCGI is involved in it, the state FDA authorities are hand in glove in granting these approvals when they should not be granted.
Hand in glove means what? Corruption?
All I can say is they're complicit. That's what the Standing Committee in 2012 said.
There's a parliamentary standing committee that has said that the FDAs of various states and the central body
and the DCGI are all complicit
in handing out approvals to drugs that should not be made available in the market.
Correct.
So, and this is now placed, a parliamentary standing committee report is placed before Parliament, and Parliament is then expected to react to that report. There has been obviously no reaction.
And this was a report that was published in May 2012.
May 2012.
So it's 6 years now.
Rajiv Pandey, you want to respond to that? This time it's not me. I'm not saying it.
There is some. Can you just again repeat that, please?
Gladly. A parliamentary standing committee placed a report before Parliament in May 2012 that specifically said there are drugs being given clearance in India for manufacturing and for marketing that have no business being given permission. And the reason why that is happening is because various state FDAs and the central board that hands out permission is hand in glove or complicit in the process. Now, this was placed before Parliament in 2012. No reaction from Parliament since then. I'll come back to the question I started with you. Why haven't we changed the process?
The process in the government has given the state FDA also as well as central FDA to decide about the giving the license. And in that license, as you know, in India, many people are breaking the law and giving this kind of license. That's why these kind of irrational drugs came in the light, and now government has taken action. Right now, you cannot say that the government, state FDA power should be removed, or that government will take a call.
All right, Dr. Wali wanted to answer that question. Dr. Mohsin Wali, go ahead, please.
Yes. See, things are not as complicated as they are sounding in this show. The problem is stakes over the counter, the medicines stocked by the chemists, the wholesalers, the stores, the companies, their warehouses are so large that the companies do any irrational practice to stop the ban. There should be enough time given by the agencies who are law enforcing to the companies, to the chemists who are innocent, who have invested their money. They can't throw them in the drain. They have to, either companies have to take the medicines back from the shelves, they replace them, they give them the compensation, and that is why the stay from the High Court came, which I was talking in the beginning. Overnight, the big international companies got the stay on technical ground. But the reason was not the medicine, reason was the money. The money which they've invested in the stocks all over India, which is a huge country, millions of chemists, trillions of bottles, they cannot throw that in the drain. When the Argimon Mexicana incident took place,
no, Dr. Wali, would you rather have them prescribe it to innocent citizens?
It was all sold.
Patients over money.
So
Come on,
this
this
is what
is a
is happening.
no-brainer.
unless we give enough time.
No, you don't need any.
We have to
Dr.
give
Wali,
enough
we don't need
time
enough time. I'm
to
sorry,
the
we can do a recall
agencies.
in weeks. This is
So
not
what
an
happens
issue.
when they reprice, when there is a
Exactly.
strip that they change the price
Recall
of, they change it
takes
like that?
Time,
Exactly.
sir. Recall
No.
takes time.
I'm sorry, Dr. Wali,
Recall
it's
takes time.
deeply
Remember,
distressing for me to
recall
hear
takes
you
time.
put money ahead of patients. At the end of the day, it's about patients. If we've decided that something is
Thing
not
which
good,
has-
it should just be
which
taken
has-
off.
Which has not been done in decades. How can you solve the issue within a week? The thing which has not been done in
No, but not being done in
how
decades
can
is
we
not
solve
a
it in
reason
week?
not to do it.
It can
No,
be
it
done.
is not possible.
No, not being. Do you agree with this?
Not at all. We've done,
No arrest
as you
has
mentioned,
been
for
made.
pricing,
No,
we
nobody
managed to
has
get back
enforced
all
the
the
law.
stock,
No, sir.
re-sticker
Give
it
enough
and send
time.
it out.
No argument.
We
Give
have a very
enough
good
time
supply
to
chain
implement the law.
and it goes to the last
Honestly.
chemist and we can account for the last strip. So it has been done, it can be done.
Yes.
And if you take the experience of the National Pharmaceutical Pricing Authority, they've punished when they found one strip lying around
Yes.
somewhere,
Yes.
punished you for the whole batch.
Yes.
So most pharma companies have got it down to a fine art to get back
It's about their
product.
whole entire distribution process, which
Absolutely.
can be reversed and brought back.
And
So-
today we can account for each batch, each strip. So it's not a big problem at all to recall a product from the market.
But we have to wrap up this discussion here, but this is obviously the not the last we're going to talk about it. There's something very concerning. If you consider the two stories that we brought up so far, one about the hip replacements and now this one, there seems to be several problems in our healthcare sector. First of all, our lives are obviously cheap. Big pharmaceutical companies bring in so much money that it tends to blur the lines between what is legal and illegal, ethical and not ethical. Indians are not empowered with the laws that they have overseas. Class action suits where you can bring these companies down to their knees. We don't have those. The laws are so weak that we have drugs making it to the shelves that have no business making it to the shelves. We have doctors prescribing drugs that they have no business prescribing. The person standing at the far end of the line is the patient who nobody wants to listen to and nobody seems to care about. We're going to take a very close look at the pharmaceutical industry, the healthcare industry, here on Mirror Now, because we believe it's a massive part of our lives. We can't allow this to continue to happen. Look at what we've discovered today. That drugs get manufactured in our country, in one tiny corner of our country and sold all over the country. It is that tiny state's FDA department that needs to give approval. They do it without conducting trials. They don't know, for example, what impact that drug will have on your liver or your kidneys or your pancreas because they have not conducted trials. They hand out permissions because they want business to come to their states. They want to create jobs. They want to put in big factories, which is fair, but it cannot be done at the price of ordinary citizens. There has to be some massive relooking. And let's all acknowledge the fact that this is how it has been done for many, many decades by previous governments, but that is no reason for us to live with it now. We must demand better service from those people who look after our pharmaceutical and healthcare industry. And we will do it here on Mirror Now. Thanks for watching.